The Buccaneers are getting more national love. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you every Monday through Friday along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. One writer believes that a recent Buccaneers acquisition could be their biggest bust this season, and the Bucs are among the league leaders in elite players. That's all coming up in a little bit, but we're starting this one off with Jacob Robinson, who released a newsletter called Scoop City for The Athletic. In it, Jacob talks about how the Jets have quietly had a really good offseason to take a big step forward before getting to his hot take, and that is that he's picking the Buccaneers to win the NFC. Robinson said, quote, "If I told you the Buccaneers were my pick to represent the NFC in this year's Super Bowl, you'd want answers, rightfully so. When Chris Branch, author of The Athletic's flagship sports newsletter, The Pulse, asked for some hot July takes about the 2025 NFL season, I said this: this year's NFC winner isn't the Eagles, Lions, or Vikings. Instead, Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers represent the NFC in this year's Super Bowl," end quote. Robinson goes on to point out that the Bucs were a botched snap and a lucky bounce away from, well, unlucky in the Bucs case, away from winning their wild card game against the Commanders. Then they would have faced the Lions and the Eagles, both of which the Bucs beat, before taking on the Chiefs, who were a dropped interception away from beating last year, even without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Robinson's reasonings for picking them in 2025 started with the offense, adding Emeka Egbuka to an already stacked receiver room, Bucky Irving leading the three-headed running back monster, the offensive line being among the best in the league last year, and they're all coming back, though he did mention that he's a little worried about Tristan Wirfs' injury having come so late into the offseason or so close to the start of the NFL season. His other concern is Mayfield's interceptions. He had fewer turnover-worthy plays last year than Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford, but he threw double the amount of interceptions that Stafford threw. Even being among the worst in the league in interceptions, the Bucs still finished as the seventh best offense according to DVOA. We already know that they were top 4 in rushing, passing, and scoring offenses last season, so cutting down on the interceptions should make them even more dangerous. And then defensively, he's calling for a breakout year thanks to the additions of Haason Reddick, Benjamin Morrison, and hopefully a healthy Antoine Winfield Jr. Now, Robinson went on to say, quote, "A winnable division in one of the league's easiest schedules should again position the Buccaneers to start the postseason at home. If Godwin returns healthy, Reddick brings Pro Bowl pass rush production, and the turnover variable swings back into Tampa Bay's favor, this team could be taking the field at Levi Stadium on February 8th, 2026, competing for the Super Bowl," end quote. Robinson also mentioned that he reached out to recently retired former Buccaneer Ndamukong Suh and asked him what it takes to win a Lombardi. Now, Suh said, quote, "There's no denying that luck is a big factor, but the real key is unselfishness. It's not enough to have talent. Players have to genuinely buy into their roles no matter what they are. When individuals prioritize themselves, it disrupts the team's cohesion and you simply won't reach your objectives. Success demands everyone playing their part," end quote. While I don't fully agree with the Bucs having one of the league's easiest schedules, especially considering that they face the Texans, Bills, Rams, and Lions all on the road, they host the Eagles and Niners, the Falcons, could be good. The Panthers could be a surprise team. Outside of the Jets, Cardinals, and Patriots, there aren't a lot of pushovers on this schedule. With that said, he's 100% right, and we've been saying it all summer. This is a team that has more than enough talent to make a deep playoff run. The biggest obstacle that they face in accomplishing that is themselves. Whether it's mistakes, injuries, poor in-game decisions, the Bucs got into a real frustrating habit in 2024 of beating themselves. We're already off to a bad start with the injuries, seeing as how Tristan Wirfs may miss the first 4 games. That would be the pass rushes of the Falcons, Texans, Jets, and Eagles. That is a nightmare scenario in and of itself. But that needs to be the extent of it. If they can, wade through that initial stretch and they can push through even at just 500, then they're going to be all right. Yes, of course, guys are going to get banged up and they're going to get hurt. And I understand that. You understand that. But you cannot have multiple week major injuries to key players like you did last year. You cannot have lingering issues that have guys in and out of the lineup for weeks at a time where either they play at 30% or they sit out entirely. Go back to Sue in that Super Bowl team in 2020. Do you remember the injury luck that they had that season? It was as if every player was in a bubble all year long. They didn't suffer any major injuries to any key players all season long. You had Devin White and Ronald Jones miss a couple of games because of COVID, but that was pretty much the extent of it. Everyone else played all year. That's the kind of luck that Sue is referring to. Yes, you need the ball to bounce your way on occasion, but you have to have your best players available week in and week out. And then the shooting yourselves in the foot with bad penalties and turnovers. I love Baker, but he cannot lead the league in interceptions and expect to lead this team to a Super Bowl appearance. It's not going to work that way. He has to be smarter about protecting the football. Of course, some of that was Baker being Baker, and you have to take the good with the bad. I understand it. You understand it. We all know. But some of it was him trying to force things to compensate or overcompensate for Mike and Chris being out, trying to force a play that just isn't there instead of throwing the ball away or taking the sack or any number of things. He has to protect the football. Then you cannot be taking stupid penalties at pivotal moments. You can't give a team a free first down when it's 3rd and 5 and your defense has a chance to get off the field. You can't negate your own first down because of a holding penalty. You can't take yourself out of field goal range because of unsportsmanlike conduct. Stupid things like that have to be minimized. The team that represents the NFC in the Super Bowl is going to be the one that has the collection of talent, the fewest amount of serious injuries, and catches more than a few lucky breaks throughout the season. We've talked about it plenty this season. We're going to talk about it plenty more in a little bit. But when you look at the elite teams that are always in the championship conversation, especially in the NFC, and you look at the talent that they have, the Bucs are right there with them. Toe to toe, nose to nose, the Bucs stack up against any of them in pure talent. Now it's about the little things. Control what you can control. Don't make the stupid mistakes and let everything else fall into place. One of the reasons that the Bucs should be better is a player that one writer said is poised to be a bust this season. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, your investments, all of your spending, all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're actually building wealth. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch Money to check everything, to track everything. You can even set and plan long-term goals all in one place. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. The Locked On NFL Top 100 is here, voted on by the NFL hosts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Our Top 100 was formed by experts that cover these teams and players every single day. Find the full list on Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't miss my reaction to where the Buccaneers players on the list landed. That was on yesterday's show. Make sure you go back and check that out. All right, Christopher Knox over at Bleacher Report wrote up something predicting which player on every single team would be their biggest bust in 2025. Names like Joey Bosa, Sauce Gardner, DeAndre Hopkins, Russell Wilson. Those were all being thrown around. Honestly, I was kind of surprised that the name for the Steelers wasn't Aaron Rodgers, but I was also a little surprised by his name for the Buccaneers. It was Haason Reddick. And Knox said, quote, "There's no getting around the fact that Haason Reddick's 2024 season with the New York Jets was a mess. Reddick held out for part of the season while angling for a new contract, appeared in only 10 games, and finished with just a single sack. Despite his 2024 struggles, Reddick earned a one-year, $14 million deal from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in free agency. While a bounce-back year is possible, there's a very real chance that he never returns to peak production. Reddick will turn 31 in September and won't be surrounded by the overall defensive talent he was during his 2 Pro Bowl seasons with the Eagles." End quote. Now, again, kind of surprised by this. But then the more I thought about it, the more I think that Knox is right. Reddick has the biggest bust potential on the team. Every time that I've talked about Haason Reddick, since the day he signed, since the OTA stuff, mini camps, every time his name comes up, I've always said, if he returns to form, or if he plays close to what he did in Philadelphia. Now, that's not to say that I think he will bust, or that I don't think that last year was an outlier, because I do believe that it was, and it was primarily the fault of the Jets, but he is on the other side of 30. So that doesn't play into his favor. But when you're taking a look at this Buccaneers team and you're trying to find who has the highest bust potential on the roster, what other player are you going to name as that candidate? Unless you're thinking that there's going to be serious regression from what we've seen the last 2 years out of Baker Mayfield because of, I don't know, the offensive coordinator switch, or, whatever the reason. Or maybe you expect a sophomore slump from Bucky Irving, and that has a hugely negative effect on the run game as a whole for the Buccaneers offense. I can't come up with a player that has a higher probability of not living up to the hope, the hype, or the expectation. Not only that, but if Bucky struggles, you can go back to Rashad. If Dean or McCollum struggle, you go to Morrison. If Ibuka struggles, you go back to McMillan. Otten, you can go to Durham or Culp. Parrish, you go back to Izzian or Tyke. Who do you go to if Haason Reddick struggles? It's back to Yaya, Anthony Nelson, hoping that Braswell takes a step forward, hoping that David Walker can ball out as a rookie from a small school, hoping that Ramirez and Watts finally live up to the hype that we've heard about them over the course of the last couple of years. It makes any struggles that Reddick has that much more magnified, because they don't have the depth there that they can turn to. Their depth is turning back to what it looked like in 2024. Jason Light has done an absolutely tremendous job of building a championship caliber roster with depth all over the place. But they essentially put all of their edge rush eggs into the Reddick basket to where if it doesn't work, it's going to be glaringly obvious. So then your defense is back to relying on Vita Vea, Kalijah Kancey, and a lot of different blitz packages to create pressure. And that kind of defense that doesn't have a surefire alpha edge rusher is not going to make it deep into the postseason. By putting together all these exotic blitzes and being forced to do that on a consistent basis, you're weakening your secondary because you're bringing Antoine, you're bringing Tyke, you're bringing McCollum, you're bringing Izzy, you're bringing all of these guys out of the secondary, which was a big weakness last year. And you're doing it because of a weakness in your pass rush. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and it's just not the formula that you have to have in order to be a legitimate championship contender. So as much as I hate to say it, Knox is right. I mean, at least he's right about the potential of Reddick being he's right about the highest potential bust on the team being Reddick. Sorry, had to rephrase. Brain wasn't working. I hope Knox is wrong. I hope that Reddick is a heck of a lot closer to his Eagles production than his Jets production. But that's why he only got 1 year. If he shows up as the Eagles iteration, he's going to get an extension after the season. If he shows up as the Jets iteration, we are going to be right back to talking about edge rusher after edge rusher after edge rusher for the Buccaneers' first round pick in the draft or on the open market in free agency. I do want to point out that if Reddick doesn't get to double-digit sacks, that does not make him a bust. If he gets to 7 or 8, but then Yaya gets to 8 or 9, and then Kancey has a handful, Vita has a handful, Braswell gets a couple, even David Walker, Anthony Nelson, they get a couple. If the sack numbers as a team from the edge rush and the defensive line go up, that is going to be partly because of Haason Reddick. Whether it's his actual production on the field, whether it's what he is doing to force offenses to focus on him in allowing other guys one-on-one opportunities, or if it's working with Yaya, working with Braswell and David Walker and all of those guys on helping them refine their pass rush skills. For those of you that saw the video of the creamsicle, the original 1976 release, and you saw Simeon Rice working with Yaya Diaby, things like that with Haason Reddick, who is a proven pass rusher in this league with multiple years of double-digit sacks, those are the kinds of things that are going to help Yaya along. So I'm not going to come on this show if Reddick has 7 or 7.5 sacks on the season and say he was a huge bust. No, it's all circumstantial. It is all, situational. If Yaya's numbers go up, Kancey's numbers go up, you have Braswell and Nelson and Walker all contributing, that is going to be in part because of Reddick, and that to me does not make him a bust. The Bucs are among the best of the best. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Wrapping things up here on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, and I mentioned a couple of times the annual survey for coaches, GMs, and scouts that Jeremy Fowler puts together to create the top 10 players at every position, or at every position group. Well, they've all been released, and just to recap real quick, you had Tristan Wirfs number 1 among tackles, Mike Evans 9th among receivers, Baker Mayfield 10th among quarterbacks, Antoine Winfield Jr. 7th among safeties, Vita Vea 9th among defensive tackles, and Levante David 7th among linebackers. Then you had Bucky Irving as an honorable mention at the running back position, and Cody Mauch was among those receiving votes at interior offensive line. On top of that, when you look at which teams had the most players appearing on the top 10 lists across all the positions, You have the Eagles with 10 because, of course, you do. They're the defending champs. They're going to be well represented. They're going to get all kinds of hype and love and flowers and all that. Okay. Then you have the Lions with 8, the Ravens with 8, the Chiefs with 7, and the Buccaneers with 6. That means as far as the teams with the most elite players across the offensive line, quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, defensive line, edge rusher, linebacker, corner, and safety, and interior offensive line, the Bucs are viewed as the 5th best team in the NFL. Not by experts, not by writers, not by media, not by anyone, except for those that are literally paid to evaluate, draft, sign, and coach these players. Yes, you can make the argument that maybe some of these players should have been higher. I think Vita Vea should have been higher. I think Mike Evans should have been higher. But a lot of people are going to make those claims about players for the teams that they cover. It's like the NFL Top 100 versus our Locked On Network Top 100. One is voted on by us who watch and evaluate and study the game. One is voted on by those who play it. So when it comes to a survey and a list like this one, it should carry a little bit more weight than other top 10 positional lists, because these are the guys whose job it is to correctly analyze whether or not a player is good or not. Because if they get that analysis wrong, they're fired. Their livelihoods literally depend on evaluating, coaching, scouting, drafting, and signing talented players. So when I say that the Bucs can go toe-to-toe with the best teams in the NFL, it's not just my opinion. GMs, scouts, coaches, executives, they all see it too. And when you start to go beyond these top 10 lists and you start to get into depth at some of these positions, the upside of some of these younger guys, when you look at the pipeline that Tampa has, Yaya Diaby, Kalijah Kancey, Emeka Egbuka, Jalen McMillan, Bucky Irving, Graham Barton, who could be a perennial all-pro center, Benjamin Morrison, Tyke Smith, Devin Culp, Cody Mauch, Zion McCollum. I can keep going. You see what Jason and Todd have been building towards. And I mean, I don't know what else to tell you besides, if that doesn't get you hyped up about the next 5+ years of Buccaneers football, I don't know what will. This is a really, really good football team. They have 6 guys that have been named among the best at their position. They have even more waiting in the wings. Starting next week, training camp. They begin that journey towards hopefully a Super Bowl. But when we're talking about these top 10 lists next year, I would expect Bucky Irving to join the running back group. That puts him at 7. I would expect, Kalijah Kancey to potentially start to make some noise. If not Kalijah Kancey, Haason Reddick could burst into the top 10, or Yaya Diaby could burst into the top 10. You could start to see Graham Barton get some love and become considered one of the best centers in the NFL. I would expect Baker Mayfield to climb that quarterback list a little bit with what we talked about at the top of the show. Keep doing what you're doing, but bring those interceptions down. Throw for 4,500 to 5,000 yards. Throw for over 40 touchdowns. Bring those interceptions down to 10, 9. All of a sudden, you're working your way towards the top 5. These are the kinds of things that I expect out of this Buccaneers team. And it's because Jason Light and his team, his scouts, have done just an absolutely phenomenal job at evaluating the talent, drafting certain kinds of players, but also certain kinds of people that come in They buy in, they're excited to be here, and they produce on the field. We're going to have plenty to discuss when training camp starts. We have plenty of questions that have yet to be answered. We've talked about a lot of them throughout the offseason. We're not sure exactly what to expect out of Josh Grizzard as the offensive coordinator. We hope that it just continues on like it did last year. God knows he's got plenty of weapons to utilize in that offense. Somebody should always be open. Even if they're covered, they're going to be open. I would expect Chris Godwin to have a big bounce back season. Now, all of a sudden, maybe the Bucs have 2 receivers in that top 10 list next year. But when you look, who are the teams that we always hear about? It's the Eagles, it's the Lions, it's the Chiefs, it's the Ravens, it's the Bills, it's the Niners, it's the Rams, the Bengals, I guess, because defense doesn't matter. Those are the teams that we keep hearing about that are continuously talked about as being championship contenders. According to the GMs, according to the scouts, according to the coaches, the Bucs have more elite talent than all but 4 of those teams. That's pretty impressive. That's going to do it for this episode. Please check out everything going on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. Follow on TikTok if you're into that sort of thing, at Locked On Bucs over there. That account is growing more and more by the day. It's been a lot of fun interacting with some of the people over there. Make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube with those notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcast. Closer we get to the season, the closer we start getting back to those live episodes, and you're going to want those notifications turned on so you can join in on the live chats whenever we go live. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. If you want to support the show, but you don't want to become an insider, it's real simple. Like the episode on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review wherever you get podcasts. Both of those things really do help other Buccaneers fans find the show. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.